Welcome to Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, and I'm your host for this program, which is designed to give you some more insight into the doings in our state capital and the doings of some of our state employees. Today we have a special program that is devoted to employee dedication to community service, not just through work for the state and for the people, but through direct community action as volunteers. We're going to have a special format to the program. We'll be breaking this into two segments today with two guests on each of these segments. This is designed to give you something of an overview of some of the kinds of things our state employees do to involve themselves in the community. Our guests today are two ladies in the first part of the show who've worked in community action and very effectively working in terms of the food drive that the state has. Our first guest is Denise Hall, who is the state employees, she's on the State Employees Benefit Board, and she is a benefits representative, having served in that position since August of 1989. Our second guest on the first part of the show is Janet Carlson, who is Operations Manager and Regional Coordinator for the Community Children and Youth Services Commission, and Janet's been doing that from September of '91 until presently and continuing. We're going to be talking about a special program that you've both been involved in, the 11th Annual Governor's State Employee Food Drive. And I understand the theme for this year was For Our Children, for Oregon 93. As we get into that, though, I'd like to pick up for a moment on a little background information on each of you so we can have a better appreciation of you as people, real people. Denise, how long have you been in state government?
I've been with the state about 8 years.
And how did you start out?
I started out in a temporary position with the job value study, working as a clerical assistant.
Then you worked your way up through the ranks, it seems.
Yes, I have.
Now, what kind of jobs have you held?
I've been a file clerk with the Applicant Services, secretary for classification and compensation, and then I went into the Benefits Board about 5 years ago as a benefits specialist.
Are you originally from Oregon, or where are you from?
I'm originally from Oregon. I've lived in Mill City all of my life.
Do you commute to Salem now for your work? Or
Yes. Yes.
How's that commute for you?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful roads between Mill City and Salem, so I've enjoyed it.
Janet, where do you hail from?
Originally, I was born in Grants Pass, went to high school in Astoria, and then moved to Salem. Been here off and on ever since.
Can you give us a little sketch of what you've done in your state service?
Well, I've been with state government about 3.5 years, and prior to that I was a teacher, and I taught for about 10 years. I came to state government. We lived up in the Beaverton area, and I taught school up there, and then we moved down to Salem because my husband took a position down here, and worked with the Salem-Kaiser District in a temporary position for a year, and then the temporary position went away and I was looking for something else to do, and I saw an advertisement for a training position with the executive department as an assistant budget analyst. So I spent 2 years in the budget and management division learning about budgets, and then after that period was over, I got a position at the Children and Youth Services Commission.
Now, what do you do in your job with the Children and Youth Services Commission?
Oh, we only have 18 staff in the Children and Youth Services Commission, and we're a statewide program, and the legislature, in its wisdom, keeps adding new elements to our program. And so I do two jobs. I'm the operations manager, which means I'm responsible for all the fiscal, administrative types of things, contracts, budget, personnel, anything that smacks of administration, I'm in charge of that. And then I'm also, since last June, the Southern Regional Coordinator. So I travel down to Josephine, Jackson, Coos Curry, and Douglas counties and work with those local commissions and help them in building their local capacity, doing training, answering their questions about process, and that type of thing.
So you work, in effect, both at the state level and at the county level with a variety of folks.
Yes, and that's been a real learning experience for me. It's been great.
Well, I'd like to shift back to you, Denise, for a moment and ask about your job as a benefits representative. What does that entail?
I'm responsible for the communications and marketing program for the Oregon Choices Flexible Benefits Program, and I also am responsible for ensuring that the State Employees Benefit Board and the benefit programs go by the state and federal mandate.
Now, those benefits are retirement, health, that sort of thing?
It would be health, dental, life and disability. So not the retirement, but all the other
All right,
benefits.
so PERS is the separate retirement system. You don't deal with that.
That's right.
Now, in terms of the benefits that you deal with, do you provide advice to people on what programs they ought to choose and that sort of thing? Or what do you do?
Normally we just try to communicate it so they can understand it and make their own choices, because everyone, really needs to look at their own health needs. So we try not to advise people what to take, but to help them get the tools to make their decisions.
So you want to make sure they're informed, but you don't want to try to direct that choice.
That's correct. We want them to make their own decisions.
All right. Well, you come at this then, you two ladies, from different perspectives. I'm curious, and I'll pick up still with you, Denise, how did you become involved in this food drive that we'll be talking about?
About 5 years ago, I was working as the file clerk there in the executive department. I was working alongside a coworker who was a single mother that had 2 small children. And normally her paycheck would carry her through the month. And one month she didn't have enough money to buy food for the last week. And so we went out and looked for agencies to try to help her get some food for her family. And not even a month later, the annual food drive came up. And I really got interested in it and volunteered as the coordinator for the Personnel and Labor Relations Division of the executive department.
Do some people overlook the fact that even employed people can be needy because sometimes the wage scale just doesn't quite make it for someone who's got a couple of kids at home and maybe a single parent?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that there are working hungry out there that don't make enough to just carry them through every month. They may have an unexpected bill that would come up.
Well, Janet, how did you become involved in the food drive?
When I was at the executive department, one of my other roles was to coordinate a business partnership that they were just starting up between the executive department as a business and the teen parent program through the Salem-Keizer School District. And when I was doing that partnership, Barbara Carranza, who was in our agency, was very much involved with the food drive. And she would kind of help me out on the types of activities I was doing with that. And so last year, when I left the agency, she called me up and asked me if I'd help her out with the food drive. And so my first year working with it was last year. And Denise and I both worked on it last year. We had 4 people last year working on it.
Now
We
this
split
year,
the state, yeah.
now it's 2 of you this year.
Right, yeah. We burned 2 people out. So we're the 2 lone soldiers left.
Well, tell me what you do to coordinate this and what the drive entails, and I'll throw that one at you, Janet.
At our level, the drive entails a lot less in terms of getting people to give food as to get all of the agency coordinators, the food drive coordinators, motivated and pass communication on to them, so they in turn will motivate the employees in their agency and allow them to have a successful food drive. So part of it is getting a good list of who all the food drive coordinators are and all the myriad of state agencies, which sounds like kind of an easy thing to do, but starting in January till February, trying to get names from every agency is kind of a tough job. Setting up a system where you can track on a weekly basis, and then finally the total numbers of food. One thing that we implemented this year was sending out what I called our good ideas section. I'd send a memo out about every other week, and people would send us their flyers and different descriptions of activities they'd done, and we'd share those so that other agencies could see what was going on and maybe try those in their own agency. So it's a lot being a cheerleader and a motivator, setting up a training session, and then just collecting information and sharing that information with other people.
Now, Denise, do you do the same sort of thing for your half of the job, or what do you do?
Basically, I do the same thing. Janet took more of the communications, got all the ongoing communications together, but I would share information that I received from my agencies. I was responsible for teams 3, 4, and 5, the larger agencies this year. So we just kind of tried to share enough information back and forth to make sure that all agencies knew what was going on.
Where does the food drive go? That is, who does it help and how does it help them? Now I'll throw that one at you, Denise.
Okay, the food drive actually helps a lot of individuals throughout the state of Oregon. Most of the donations come in the Marion and Polk County area because that's where the majority of the state employees are. But there are other small regional coordinating agencies in Coos County, over in Hermiston, in Pendleton, so they also benefit by what the state employees do. In addition, if there are excess food donations or monetary donations in the Salem area, they can share it through their network agencies, so what we do can help the whole state.
Janet, can you tell me something about the whole genesis of this. That is, why are state employees doing this? And is this just another government project where we appropriate money and go out and buy food? Can you explain some of that?
I'm not sure why it started in the first place. I know they've been doing it for 11 years. I think state employees, they feel good about helping other people. I know that when I've done the business partnership things as well as the food drive, you get a tremendous response. To add to what Denise said too about who gets this food, it's very important for them to understand exactly who they're serving. And Denise came up with a theme this year for our Children for Oregon. And I think that we sent out a fact sheet to all the agencies so they know where the food is going. But I think a lot of people don't realize that almost half of the people that receive emergency food are children, 45%. And that oftentimes we were talking about working poor, there are also people, I think a lot of times we think there's a safety net there, and that those people who aren't working can receive food stamps. And what they don't realize is those food stamps, for about 87% of the people report that those food stamps run out at the end of the third week, and then they're looking for food for that final week for themselves and their children. So I think it's the type of project that people can get involved in, that they can feel good about. There's a little bit of spirit of competition, but we try to downplay the competitive side and really focus on where this food is going and how we're helping people.
Now, this is not a government-funded project. This is voluntary work by state employees. And the money that is raised is actually raised directly through contributions that the employees gather out there in the community or make themselves, as I understand it. And the same is true of the food. That is, the employees gather the food themselves and bring it in and contribute it. Then you operate through a food bank operation. Can you tell us how that works, Denise?
Well, as I understand the food bank, the Oregon Food Bank are a number of different smaller or regional coordinating agencies that have joined together. I think approximately about 4 years ago they joined together into what's the Oregon Food Bank. You know, they would bring the donations in to the centralized regional coordinating, and then they distribute it to smaller agencies.
So they have a
within the
regular
community.
organized program for how to get the food to people that are needy, and it's not like just anybody can walk in and say, gee, I'd like to grab some food. They've got ways of determining real need and providing that assistance.
That's right. They have to determine the need, and they provide it at specific agencies.
Well, as you've gone through this program, do you find that this helps develop a sense of camaraderie among state employees, that brings some of them together in this volunteer effort? Janet, I'll throw that one at you.
Yeah, I think so. And we have some examples of projects that different agencies have done. The Housing and Community Services Agency, for example, actually threw a benefit where they went to, it's called West Side Station? Anyway, and they did this all in the evening, and they got some musical groups to come in and play for free, and then people either brought cans of food or cash to come see the benefit, and they were able to be, I think they came in second place in their team. We divided the state into teams because up until 2 years ago it was just the top 4 winning agencies, and it was always the giant agencies. And I came from a small agency, and so I decided that's not fair. So now we have winners in each of the categories by size of agency.
So there's actually a competition here, too, in the sense of trying to show that you can contribute the most in cash and dollars?
Right, and what we do is we count the amount of actual cash that we collect, the amount of actual dollars that we collect, and then we convert for competition purposes. We multiply the dollars times 6 and add it to the pounds so that we're comparing just one number among agencies, and then we divide that by the number of employees. So in getting that list, we also have to find out how many employees are in the agency so that we can track the pounds per employee.
So the formula is every dollar is equal to 6 pounds of food, and then you total up the pounds of food and divide it by the number of employees to work out the winners.
Right.
I want to make sure I ask you to tell us who the winners were this year, because we only have about a minute left, and I hate to leave them out. And you might mention something about the quantity.
Yeah, this year we collected about on that converted total, 1.6 million pounds of food. That's
1.6 million pounds.
821 tons of food at a converted rate. The actual amount of pounds was 350,000, and the actual amount of cash was about 215,500. So that's a really good effort. This is the best that we've done since the beginning of the food drive, except it was slightly higher in 1991, but it was 154 tons more than a year ago. So we did a great job this year.
Well, that's wonderful. Can you mention a couple of the winning agencies?
Okay, in the first place agencies, I'll just mention those, are the Marine Board for the smallest agencies, and then State Treasury, Mental Health Division, Department of Insurance and Finance, and then Oregon State Police combined with Emergency Management Division. We have some agencies that will pool together.
So they're the ones who deserve our
purposes.
kudos for having done the job this time.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for being with me this morning, and actually, by the time the audience sees this, I should be saying this evening, since we are taping ahead of time. And again, I'd like to mention to our folks that you've been listening to Denise Hall, who is with the State Employees Benefit Board, and Janet Carlson, who is Operations Manager and Regional Coordinator with the Community Children and Youth Services Commission, and they've been talking about the 11th Annual Governor's State Employee Food Drive. Thank you for joining me on Capital Insight.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, your host, and you just had an opportunity to hear about the 11th Annual Governor's Food Drive. Before we continue, I'd like to mention if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to write to me at Capital Insight, H395, State Capitol, Salem, Oregon 97310. We're always happy to hear from you, and I'd welcome any comments or ideas you may have. We have a second part to the show today as we shift to a couple of additional guests who will highlight another element of state employee service. I want to emphasize that we're talking about volunteer service on the employee's own time. We're not really talking about government programs. We're talking about volunteer efforts by people who happen to work for state government. And our guests on this segment are Holly Groves, who is with the Department of Transportation and is a closing specialist, a lady who also has a background in real estate and uses that background working for the state now Department of Transportation Right-of-Way Division, closing those property deals. And our other guest is Jennifer Billman, who is the principal of Bush School and someone who has worked with Holly on a program that I'm very excited to hear about. But first, before we get into the program, I'd like to ask you, Holly, to tell us a little bit about your background. Who are you? Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Saskatchewan, Canada, but I've been in the state of Oregon most of my life, and in the Willamette Valley and in the Salem area since 1969.
Now, what do you do for state government in terms of this closing specialist? I tried to allude to it. But
Basically pay the grantor for the property when we acquire the property to improve, widen, or build a new highway. That includes all the paperwork, assuring that the state has clear title and processing all of that.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing that for the Department of Transportation for 8 years.
Now, before that, you were on the private side. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, I spent about 20 years working for title companies in the private sector. And when I left that to go to work for state government, I worked for the Department of Revenue for 1 year. And a gal there knew that my background was in real estate and knew of the job at transportation. And that's how I moved to transportation.
Now, our other guest is Jennifer Billman, who is the principal of Bush Elementary School here in Salem. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a thumbnail sketch?
I'm a longtime Salem resident, came in 1966. Started out as a classroom teacher for Salem Kaiser, and then moved into beginning the Head Start program for Salem Kaiser School District when Head Start first launched itself on the national scene. Then the early childhood coordinator and was involved in starting kindergarten, and then became an elementary principal, and I've been at Bush School for 8 years.
Now, Bush School is located at Mission and close to 12th. Actually, there's one more cross
Yes,
street
we're on
there.
Mission and University across from Deepwood, so we're a part of the downtown community.
Now, what interests me about the two of you is that Holly apparently saw you on television at one time talking about the needs of your school. Maybe, Holly, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you picked up on what goes on at Bush and some of the needs there.
Well, I did see Mrs. Billman interviewed on a show similar to this, and she was discussing the needs at her school, but the thing that caught my attention in particular was her comments about the children being afraid to leave at the holidays because they don't have very happy homes. And I was really touched by that and went to work and said, gee, can you believe this is going on in our community just down the road? And my coworker said, well, what should we do about it? So I called Mrs. Billman, and she indicated that the previous Christmas, she and the teachers had contributed their time and money to put on a small Christmas party for, I think, about 30 of the neediest children. And she suggested that we contribute to that effort. And that's how we got started.
Now, you have developed a program known as ABCD, which
Correct.
is above and beyond the call of duty.
Correct.
And this is something sponsored in effect by the right-of-way section of DOT.
Correct.
Now, tell us a little bit about that. But before we do, I don't want to forget to ask you this. Would you let folks know, because they'll be thinking this later on, how they can contribute to this program?
They're welcome to send monetary contributions. Those can be sent to room 417 Transportation Building to my attention. That's Salem 97310. You can call me at 378-6524 and leave a message.
Would you repeat that number one more time for anybody who just happened to miss it as you were saying it?
378-6524.
And what's the address again?
Room 417 Transportation Building, Salem. The zip is 97310. And besides monetary contributions, we have people that will contribute wrapping paper, tape. In particular, now the school has requested that we try to secure some kind of medical and dental help for the children. There's a real need there. We've set up a small amount of our money we've set aside for emergency medical needs, perhaps fixing broken glasses, medication for repeat ear infections, that kind of things. But in particular, they need physicians that would not necessarily donate their time for free, but maybe at a reduced rate to see children that have emergency medical needs.
So if any of our listeners are in physicians' offices or clinics or hospitals or with pharmaceutical companies, will they please take note? Now,
Correct.
I kind of jumped ahead deliberately because I wanted to get that address and phone number out because I was excited to read about the program. But of course, we need to let people know what the program is all about. And Jennifer, I'd like you to explain, if you could, what kind of needs you have with the kids at Bush School, which is similar to the needs at some schools, at least in our community.
Yes. We have the whole spectrum of needs of children who live in poverty. 88% of our children live below the poverty line, and so we have clothing needs and health needs. Those are the most pressing at the moment. And this program has been a great help to us, not only in making sure that children don't have a bleak Christmas, but Holly and her group carefully choose what they give our children so that it won't be toys that are gone in a couple of weeks, but clothes that they can wear, books that they can read. We also have, I think the healthcare issue is getting lots of attention right now, but that's been a critical one for us over the years. Children whose parents work very hard, but they're very poor, and they can't afford, without insurance and medical cards, the $2,000 for tubes and tonsils and adenoids removal so that they can hear and profit from the education that happens at Bush School. That always is our focus. How can what we do help our children so that they can be more successful learners? And clothes and someone caring about them and medical attention is probably the most important thing that can happen. And Holly's group, through their nonprofit organization, has really, it's grown, and they've come close to touching some of those needs for our children. We have 700 children in the school, and so there are lots and lots of, when you do 88% of 700 children, you have a lot of children in need, and this is a great help to us and our kids.
I guess we all need to reflect for a moment that while government provides the school building and the teachers and the basic school books, and of course as much hands-on work with the youngsters as possible, that's one element. That's what the school district can do. And then sure, there are government programs to help those who are poor, but they are fairly mechanistic. I don't want to be negative about the programs, but the point is that if you're on welfare, you may get your monthly welfare check, which will probably not quite get you through your rent and whatever other needs, transportation needs, or whatever else that you need for your family. And yes, there are food stamps, but as we heard in the first part of this program, they may run out 2/3 of the way through the month, and then you're left short again. And what we're trying to do here is to build up some sense of hope and continuity for these kids. And Holly, that's where you come in again. How have you organized this effort? And is it basically, again, in the right-of-way section?
Basically, yes. All of the people that volunteer their time certainly are from right away. We have major shoppers among us. The Christmas gift includes a shirt, 3 pair of socks, 3 pair of underwear, a book, a comb, and a toothbrush, and we do that for about $5 a child. We're only able to do that by shopping seriously all year long. We can find a sale anywhere. Some of our volunteers don't care to shop, but they'll tell us when they see a good sale.
Now, you have volunteers who have to do the shopping, then you have people who have to put together the packages. You also have people who have to wrap the packages, and then you organize a party. Tell me about this party.
The party's held pretty close to the end of the session, just before the school holiday. Jennifer arranges the date and tells us when to show up, basically.
This is in December before Christmas.
Yes. And we provide Santa Claus. We have one gal who sewed a to-be-envied Santa Claus suit, and we have a right-of-way supervisor who is Santa Claus. And we hand out the presents, and I have to tell you that we really enjoy doing that. The children, much to my amazement, really believe in Santa Claus. I'm pleased to see that. We have a real good time doing that. It's done after school hours because not all children are provided for. They do not open their gift at the school. They don't all get exactly the same thing. We try real hard, but they take their gift home. We also provide about 75 additional small gifts of books or puzzles, stuffed animals, because when the family comes to pick up the gift, quite often they bring the siblings with, and in some families that's several children sometimes. And the first year it was kind of a heartbreaker to send all the other little ones away without anything. So now we provide something for every child that shows up.
Well, that's wonderful. I think that you're showing a real sensitivity here, and I want to emphasize that this is people who happen to be state employees who work together, but are doing this on their own time.
Right.
And you even mentioned now, as far as the party goes, all of those arrangements are done by employees of the right-of-way section on their own.
Right.
Now, in terms of this whole continuity of program, have you in effect adopted Bush School?
Yes, we have. I suspect it'll stay that way for quite a while because they have such great need there. It's not that we would have to be confined to that. We have no particular rules that say we couldn't go outside of that, but at this point we're having trouble just meeting their needs. We started 3 years ago saying we could provide 50 gifts and provided 80. 3 years later, we've set a goal of 500 children for Christmas. So that's a major effort. Plus, we're trying to provide an entire outfit for the children that leave the shelters to come to school in the fall. And at the moment, I don't know how many that is, but we need that in addition.
One of the problems you mentioned to me before the program began was children who aren't adequately clothed to go to school, and it may be shocking to many of us to find kids who wear pajama tops, as I recall at one point, no socks.
That's right.
And so what you're trying to do now is also at the start of the school year make sure that there's a set of clothing available to those kids.
Correct, and we buy everything new. We're able to because we do a good job shopping, but we're also into enhancing their self-image.
Now, you've created a nonprofit corporation, so that it's a charitable organization,
Yes.
so any donations are tax deductible?
Yes.
And again, how should people reach you by telephone and by address?
You can reach me by phone at 378-6524. If I'm not available right at that moment, leave a message. The address to mail a contribution to would be room 417, Transportation Building, Salem, 97310.
And maybe we can encourage employees and other agencies to do the same.
Be happy to have their help.
Jennifer, as you work with other principals, are there other schools in the community with similar needs?
Yes, there are. In the state of Oregon, about 5 of the highest schools of poverty are in Salem, which is amazing to people. And so there are other schools, primarily in the downtown core area, who also have tremendous needs for their children.
So maybe some of the employees who are listening can pick up on that. And with that, I'd like to thank you, Jennifer Billman, principal of Bush School, for being with us, and Holly Groves with the right-of-way section of the Department of Transportation. And folks, you've been with us on Capital Insight. I'm State Representative Kevin Mannix from Salem, your host, and thank you for joining us.